Today we're going to be going over winter and cold weather equipment. Not all of the gear that you see me wearing, but only the specific items that you'll need to know about in a winter and cold weather environment. What you'll need, how to properly utilize them. So let's get to it. So first of all, let's start off by talking about the winter environment in general, what the risks are and how it differs from a more temperate or a warm weather environment. So personally, I love winter camping. I think it's the best time. There are no animals, there are no bugs, there are no people. But with that comes three very important things I've learned over the years, and that's preparation, training, and equipment. Winter camping can be extremely enjoyable if you have those three things down to the nines. In preparation, we're going to talk a lot about that today, as well as the equipment necessary. But the biggest thing of all is training. And I know you're all hearing that everywhere now, but it is absolutely essential and very, very important. Don't just watch this video, go out, practice the things, get with your mates, and above all, just have fun doing it. So with winter camping, winter operations and cold weather environments, the main thing we're worried about is our body temperature, but it's very, very easy to overdo that. What I mean by that is people will layer up, and the second you start putting on this heavy equipment and running around, hiking, you're going to find that you're going to begin to sweat very, very quickly. You'll notice now I'm wearing Norwegian undershirt. I took off all my combat layers. I just hiked up with a 90-pound ruck and I started to sweat. So it's amazing how quickly we can underestimate our ability to what we think is warm or cold at the time. And what I mean by that is there's an adage, you should start cold. And what that means is you should start with kind of being cold with your body temperature. That way, once you get moving, your body will warm up and you can begin hiking or walking or rucking, whatever you're doing, and your body will be at a comfortable temperature. What we're trying to avoid is sweating. When we sweat, it's very, very hard to cool off. So by controlling our temperature, the second you begin to start to feel yourself sweat, you're going to want to remove layers. When we talk about layering, we'll have a thermal underlayer, an insulation layer, and a water or windproof layer. Right now, I'm wearing an insulating layer. My field jacket was my windproof, waterproof, and we're going to talk more about that when we talk about clothing. But you're trading off these layers in at different times during your operation, depending on what you're doing. As again, when you're moving, you may want you want to start cold, therefore you'll have less layers on. But I always recommend starting with at least that wind shell protection. That way that wind isn't biting you. Whereas if you're at camp relaxing, you may decide to bundle up, or if you're sleeping or on watch, again, you may apply those thermal layers. But the second you start to warm up or feel yourself sweat, that's when you're going to want to take and control your body temperature. On the note of temperature, let's talk about something that I've yet to really see people talk about, and that's even knowing the temperature. We're so used to checking the weather on our phones. What's very, very useful is having the ability to know how hot or cold it is outside. On the outside of my equipment, I will always keep a little temperature gauge. It doesn't cost much. It might not even be that reliable, but it's going to give you a good idea of how cold it is. This is really going to help you get used to knowing when you should control your water, when you should start warming food, when you should start applying layers. Because again, just because you feel warm and sweating doesn't mean that your sensitive equipment is the same temperature. So having a temperature gauge, knowing it's below zero now, even though I might feel like it's 50 degrees because I'm so warm, the ambient temperature is below zero. How are my batteries doing? How is my water doing? It's pretty windy today. I see ripples on the lakes and oceans if you're near water. Well, that's an indication that the wind is 15 miles an hour or more when you start to see those white caps. Okay, so if it's 15 wind and the temperature is -3, on the back of these, you have a wind chill chart. Using all these tools around you make a huge, huge difference to how you approach your winter environment. So now let's talk about layers and clothing. We'll go bottom up. First of all is going to be your footwear. I like a good pair of waterproof leather boots for the winter environment. We're not going to be talking about extreme cold weather because not many of us are going to be going into the Arctic Circle and get wind chill of 100 miles, 105 miles an hour. The boots I'm wearing are Bates cold weather combat boots. They're exactly what they say on the tin. They've got a slight insulation layer, they are full grain leather, therefore they're waterproof. And they also have a very, very deep tread to help with snow, as well as a surrounding band to help with, waterproofing and keeping mud and all that sort of stuff out. Next is going to be socks. So when it comes to socks, you want a full, I know you've heard it 100 times, but you want a full merino wool sock. Darn Tough is a great company. Smart Wool, another great company. You only want to wear one sock, but you'll notice these socks come in different weights. I prefer a medium weight for the winter, simply because, going back to our previous conversation, you're going to get hot and you're going to start sweating. If you pack on socks like your mum did when you were a kid, you're going to sweat, and we don't want that. The boot is going to keep you very, very warm. And again, if you take good care of your equipment, which we're going to talk about, that'll even more so be the case. So a good medium weight sock is what I find works. I like a mid-calf height, therefore I can pull it up over my boots. You don't want a low height. If you're wearing mid-ride boots, that sock is going to chafe and you're going to get all sorts, or lack of sock is going to chafe on your skin. You're going to get that boot rubbing against your skin, and we don't want that. So a good mid-weight merino wool sock will do. Depending on how many days you're out there, will depend on how many socks you have. I like one sock per day plus two. So I found is a good rule of thumb. When your socks get wet, a good technique that's well known is tucking them into your pant line, hanging them out underneath your shirt or jacket, and that's going to help dry them out. Moving on from socks, we're going to get to trousers. So with the trousers, you're going to want something that is, again, waterproof, windproof, and slightly insulating. A lot of militaries will label or have different clothing depending on their environment. So you can find temperate weather and cold weather clothing. I'm a fan of temperate weather trousers in a cold weather environment. The reason why is I still want that ventilation to stop me from sweating. I don't want it to be too waterproof that my legs become basically sweating trees of moisture, because we're going to talk about Gore-Tex and we're going to have the ability to waterproof those trousers. So we want something that is tough, can keep off that outside moisture and wind enough, and then if we want to double up, we can. We can always put a thermal layer under, we can always put a Gore-Tex layer over. It's a good mid-ground. I don't like those super heavy snowboarding pants, but you don't want a lightweight jungle pant either. Again, just like the socks, something in between. I'm wearing the full Raven G1000s Vida Pros. I absolutely love these. I've been testing them for a while. They've got the right mix of waterproof lower halves, ventilated upper halves, reinforced on the knees and arse as well. Moving up from that, we've got our belt. So our belt equipment. I'm a big fan of wearing the gun belt with the Velcro. That way I can attach that if need be, but any roll pin or standard belt will do. Leather belts can also be very useful for things like stropping knives at finishing of sharpening and utilizing them for other things as well. Back to the trousers for a second. We're going to talk about thermal underlayers. It's a good idea to have a thermal underlayer as well. I'll roll on footage of that. These are Marine Corps issue. As well as a Gore-Tex overlayer. Gore-Tex is hugely important. It's going to stop the wind, the snow, and when the wind picks up or it gets extremely cold, it's going to protect those other layers, and it's going to let those thermal layers do their job. It's also going to allow ventilation to, again, stop that moisture from building underneath your clothing, because once your clothing gets wet, it is extremely hard to dry it off again. Underwear, you're looking for the same thing. You're looking for something antibacterial, moisture wicking. Merino wool is a great option. Lots of militaries also offer special military underwear. It's a synthetic material that is antibacterial. These are all great options. Going to our tops, a good merino wool undershirt is a must. Cotton will trap sweat, retain sweat, and you will get cold extremely quickly. Having wool, merino wool, will allow that moisture wicking material and antibacterial properties to help you out in terms of an undershirt. So that's what we want to go for. You then have a thermal layer. This can be something as simple as a Norwegian shirt, which I'm wearing now, or a thin thermal, a waffle top, very popular in the US military. You're then going to go to your combat shirt. This you can layer on top of each other. It's going to be a standard, again, a temperate weather combat shirt, the same as the trousers. After that, we have a field jacket or smock, and this is mainly for wind protection or to forego the combat shirt and wear over your thermal layer, because your combat jacket is where you're going to stage a lot of that essential cold weather equipment, which we'll go into later. On top of that, you have Gore-Tex layer. The idea of this is going to be to keep out the wind, the rain, the snow, but also allow that moisture to escape. An important note with the thermal layer is it has to be big enough to fit over your combat equipment, not your backpack. It's more of a point of a poncho, but it should at least fit over your field vest, body armor, belts. The reason is you want to be able to throw this on and off very quickly in the field. Moving on from that, we're going to come to headwear. Well, one last note on the upper layers and trousers. It's a very good idea to have ventilation. A lot of modern equipment will have armpit ventilation. That's a very, very good idea. Moving on to headwear. There are many, many different types of headwear. You can get very thin thermals, a thicker fleece beanie, balaclavas, field hats, boonies, combat helmets. Find what works for you. I'm a big fan of having 3 items. Something to patrol in that will camouflage me, that is lightweight, something to fight in like a combat helmet, and something to keep me warm at night while camping, eating dinner, or getting ready for bed. I find these 3 items work very, very well together, and I've always found myself using them, and when I haven't brought them, I've always regretted not having them. So let's talk about some headwear here. First, we have our lightweight one. This is a very, very thin, lightweight beanie, great for wearing around the camp underneath a helmet, just enough to keep your ears warm and the wind off. That one I always like to keep my person nice and warm. Adding into headwear, we've got neck gaiters, very, very thin one. Same idea, it's lightweight, keeps the wind off, nice and comfortable. Can also use both of them to create a full face balaclava. Got your heavyweight beanies. So this is a Marine Corps issue. Very, very warm and insulating. Great for wearing underneath the helmet as well. Getting into your extreme cold weather, you've got a balaclava. This you can actually roll up into a beanie as well. Big fan of these. The humble schmog, many, many uses. Neck scarf, more insulating layers, towel. You guys know the deal. Going into socks and footwear, as discussed, merino wool socks. These are darn tough. Many, many of those. Socks don't need explaining beyond what I've already mentioned. Nice to have tool are Gore-Tex socks. These are great if you traverse a river or wet terrain. Your boots get wet. You put on warm socks, you then put these on, and this is going to keep your feet nice and dry and allow that heat to escape to help dry that boot out simultaneously. This is a great, great piece of equipment. Another item is spare uniforms. Good old Woodland, again, that medium weight and full spare uniform in case anything gets wet. Lots of spares in the winter simply because we want to stay as dry as possible. Stay dry and stay alive. Gore-Tex layer, hood is a must, and again, big enough that you can fit over your equipment. Coming over to gloves, I've got a working pair of gloves. These are just 511s, tactile enough to operate a rifle or other equipment. And then your extreme cold weather gloves. This is for those chilling temperatures, wind chill, and when you still have to use your hands to set up camp. Yeah, these are black diamonds. I use these in the mountains in Scotland, and they are absolutely invaluable when the temperatures really drop and those winds really pick up. One last note on headwear. It really helps to have a good set of eye pro. Not just for playing airsoft with the boys, but to help snow blindness. If you're out in the field for numerous days at a time, your eyes will start to hurt. You're basically giving yourself caveman LASIK eye surgery. That snow reflects that sunlight extremely harshly. To help preserve your eyesight and even see what's going on, a good pair of tinted sunglasses is a good idea. If they're ballistic, these are ESS, military issue. These are great because they come with the clear lens also. And you can actually just clip off these side pieces. And in 3 seconds, you can have a clear set as well. Good case, don't get them crushed. But eye protection is a very good idea in a snowy Arctic or winter environment. So let's go through what I keep in my field jacket in a cold weather environment. First off, as discussed, a water filter. Nice and tucked away, nice and warm. This pocket I keep open for magazines, batteries, and the like. Top pocket, emergency fire starter. Down here, calories, whistle, emergency compass, matches, and cut pieces of fuel tabs to ensure I can start a fire. This field jacket also has a thermal liner. Very, very big fan of that. Great for warming your hands. One last note on clothing. You're gonna want to keep it dry. Well, how do you do that in the field? It starts at home. So what you want to do is make sure that all your kit is dry, mold-free, ready to go, and treated before you get home. And that starts with the end of every operation. I know you're tired, I know you want to go to bed, but take the time to lay out all your gear, hang it up in the shower. I like to get clothing hangers. In my bathtub, I use the shower rack, and then I hang all of my gear, and that just helps it dry and air out. Once it's dry and aired out, I'll then treat it with a product like Nikwax to waterproof it. These Gore-Tex products will lose their waterproof coating. Nikwax is a great product that I love, and it helps waterproof all the equipment. You can treat your boots as well. If you take care of your gear will take care of you. So how do you stay dry in the field? Well, it starts with taking good care of your equipment. If you leave your equipment in your pack and it's wet and soaked, next time you bring it out, it's gonna be very, very uncomfortable, and you're gonna wish you hadn't. What do you do if your kit is wet? So you're in the field, your kit's wet. Well, you can do a number of things. The first one is if you have to immediately get that clothing dry. Say you fall into a lake, something bad happens. We've got spare clothing. That's the first job. You can set up a poncho against a tree, your pack, you can have your buddies help you. If you're doing it solo, you can use stumps or the like. You're gonna use that poncho, which will go over, quick shelter to put up, and you're gonna get that cold, wet clothing off of you immediately. After that, you're gonna use a towel, either your Smock or something else dry to dry yourself off. Get those socks and other layers, thermal layers on quickly, change out, utilizing the Gore-Tex socks as well if you have those, or even trash bags over your feet, over your warm socks, so those wet boots do not saturate your feet and expose you to risk of hypothermia. Another way to dry off Gore-Tex equipment, which is a very common method in the far north with the, I believe it was the Finnish or Swedish people, the Sami, is if your clothing is breathable, like a merino wool or a Gore-Tex, if it becomes soaking wet, you can wring it out, and then if the snow is dry, only if it is dry snow, you can actually put the jacket into the snow, kind of wiping it off, and then shake it out. And the snow is going to absorb those particles, it's going to freeze, and you can shake off that water. It's not perfect, but it can work very, very well in an emergency. Once you're at camp, you can set up a tarp, a tent, create a warm environment to help that clothing dry off. Another way is you can wring it out and let it cold freeze dry, which is basically you're getting all the moisture out and you're putting it in the sunlight in minus temperatures. Again, it's not ideal, but it is going to get a good amount of water out, so you can wear it and then your body heat can deal with the rest. It's not ideal, but the best thing you can do is tread carefully, know your environment, and prepare your equipment, have spares. That's the best way to stay dry. Your pack and equipment. So in a winter environment, you're going to need more space to carry all of this spare equipment, and that's going to start with your pack. I'm using a Marine Corps ILBE system. It's older, it's dated, but it works. You're going to need a lot more room than if you're carrying your equipment just during the summer times and the warmer months for all that extra spare clothing that we talked about. As well as with the pack, you're going to have a bigger sleep system. With the sleep system, I'm a big fan of the US military cold weather sleep system. It's very, very big. So you're going to need a compression sack. That's going to be a must. That's going to help you compress it down and put it into your equipment. Just like everything else, you're going to want a Gore-Tex layer. So you're going to have a Gore-Tex layer over that sleeping bag to help keep moisture and wetness out, but also let sweat escape. As well, you're going to want to treat that sleeping bag, waterproof it, waterproof the Gore-Tex, and then when you're at home, don't keep it in the stuff sack. Otherwise, you're going to compress those fibers. You're going to want to keep it hung up in a closet or laid out somewhere that it can breathe, that all those nice fluffy materials can stay nice and fluffy, because the way a sleeping bag works is it traps that ambient air. So you're not going to want to keep it compressed all the time. You're going to want to take it out and let it dry. It's also a good idea when it comes to that to have an emergency blanket. So this can be something small, but this is again a fail-safe. If you become hypothermic, you can get your dry clothes on, you can use it on yourself, a buddy. So I highly recommend having an emergency blanket. Not a cheap Walmart one, but something that is actually built to be a survival tool and to keep you warm, and that you can also slide inside and use as an emergency sleeping system as well. Continuing on with the sleeping system is going to be a mat. A mat is extremely important. I have spent the night out and not had one, and the ground will suck the heat out of your body. You need a nice mat, some sort of insulating layer. I'm not a fan of blow-up mats because they can be punctured. I'm a big fan of the old-fashioned, yes, bulky, but never fails you, will never break, good old solid insulating mat. That can be ex-military, it can be civilian. The one I have is a square folding ex-German military sleeping mat. It works great. You will never regret having one. So those are a must for your sleeping system. Something else you'll have to do in a winter environment is waterproof your equipment. This is very easy. We're going to wrap all of our gear in either dry bags or trash bags, bin bags, heavy duty ones. This isn't only going to waterproof our equipment to keep it dry, which again, essential part of cold weather operations, but it's also going to ensure that if we have to do a river crossing or something else, that pack will become buoyant and we can use it and utilize it for that purpose. So waterproofing all of your equipment is going to be essential as well to keep that moisture out. If you get moisture in there, if you get water in there, it's gonna freeze and it will find its way into nooks and crannies that you do not want it to. Next up is going to be water and hydration. Guys, I know it doesn't feel like you're sweating, but in a winter environment, you're going to need to drink and consume a lot of water. So it's very important that you have the ability to not only carry that water, but access it and it be accessible when you need it. What that means is that you're going to want to keep a water close to your body. I'm a big fan of having a water bottle on my person, either on my belt kit or my vest. That way my ambient body heat is helping keeping that water above freezing temperature. In your pack, I like to keep my water in the center of the pack or nearer to my back for the same reason. Another big thing is water filtration. We can only carry so much water. We're gonna need to access water in the field. In the winter environment, people always talk about using snow. That is fine, but oftentimes snow will contain parasites and bugs that will come to the surface. So when you boil that, be wary. That's why I'm a fan of pre-filtering it, and make sure you boil that snow. Don't just get it warm, actually bring it to a raging boil for at least 1 minute. Once the water's boiled, you can fill up your canteens, keep them warm as usual. As temperatures begin to drop, bring that water closer to your body. Another good way of filtering water is going to be with a water filter. But the biggest thing with this is you have to keep it close to your body. You cannot put this in your pack, you cannot put it on an outside pocket. If that filter freezes, water expands by 7%. So it's going to expand and it's actually going to crack open the gaps in the microscopic porous filter, and it's going to render it useless. So if your filter freezes, do not use it. That filter is no longer good, it is no longer safe. In a winter environment, you filter your water, and I keep it on the innermost pocket of my field jacket. That is an absolute must. You have to do that. You cannot keep a water filter in your backpack. Another thing that can help water from freezing is adding electrolytes. You can add salt to your water. Yeah, it's kind of disgusting, but it will bring that freezing. It will help the water not freeze. Another thing you can do is have electrolyte packets. A big fan of those, and that's also going to help that water kind of fight off that urge for it to freeze a little bit longer. Coming off from water, let's talk about food. So food in a winter environment is going to be very, very important. Fuel is essential. But there's some considerations we have to consider when bringing that food into a winter environment. A big one, again, it all comes down to moisture. Moisture likes to freeze. Food contains a lot of water. So your typical MREs, your typical food is going to want to freeze. There are things we can do to mitigate this. We can keep the food in our pack closer to our back, better for that heat. Or if we know that we're going to be eating in 2 or 3 hours, we can bring that food into our field jacket. Again, a big reason why I'm a fan of field jackets with a lot of pockets for winter and cold weather operations is we have that pocket space to do this. We can bring those ration packs into our inner pockets, allow them to thaw out, allow them to warm up before cooking them. If you're boiling water, you can also do this, but it's a lot easier if you do not let that meal freeze outright. You can buy meals that are moisture free. A lot of militaries have cold weather rations. I'll put in footage of an American and Swedish one here. These meals contain no moisture. You add the boiling water. They are also a lot lighter. So they are not at risk of freezing, and they're also light enough that you can carry a lot of them, which is going to come into our next topic, which is going to be calories. You burn a lot of calories in the wintertime. In normal operations, you'll burn anywhere from 4,000 to 5,000. In the wintertime, that can be as high as 8,000. So the foods you choose are going to be essential. You're going to want things that are very, very high in fat and carbohydrates. Proteins will strip energy and salts from you and essential electrolytes that you'll need for operating in this cold weather environment. So do not bring out beef jerky. I'm a big fan of peanut butters, soups, and military rations such as pastas, chilies, macaronis, stuff of that nature that are very, very high in fat and very, very calorie dense food. But again, keep those proteins down. You want electrolytes, fats, and carbohydrates. Let's get into how we're going to boil water and cook our food. We have many options. Fire is the number one thing that people think of. I stage matches all over my body. I have them in my field jacket, in my pants, in my belt kit, in my chest rig, in my webbing, in my pack. I have them in my cooking kit. I have them everywhere. You never want to run out of matches. That is the worst thing that can happen. Second worst thing is not being able to find dry firewood. Having the skills to find dead standing dry firewood in the winter and accessing that dry core is going to be an essential skill. I won't go into that today, but I suggest you look up and practice that in a safe environment. To mitigate that, I also like to carry fuel tablets and a gas stove for wintertime. It is not worth being in an environment where we need to defrost food, warm water, melt it down to filter, and not having access to heat. I would much rather carry a contingency like a fuel tablet or a gas stove that guarantees my ability to make fire, get water at any time, at any moment. Because without water, you will not last long at all. So in my opinion, it is not worth risking being lightweight on the bet that you might or might not find dry wood, and you might or might not be able to start a fire, and the winds might not be strong, or you might be able to, that's too many mights. I want the ability to put a tarp over my pack and start an instant fire or gas stove, and have the ability to access heat, to either warm myself again or filter water and get calories in. On shelter is going to be your best friend. Depending on the temperature, if you're around 0 degrees Celsius, then a simple tarp can do. Either way, you're going to want to ensure, just like with any season of camping or outdoors or operation, that shelter can be quickly accessible. I like to keep a poncho in the top of my equipment with my Gore-Tex in case heavy rains come, I get wet and I need to throw that over myself and my pack to keep warm, or help a buddy out, or create some sort of light camouflage. A good ex-military surplus tarp is perfect and cheap for this. Your main tarp is going to be one of very good quality. I'm a big fan of the British military tarps because they can also double as a stretcher, and they are extremely well made. The US Marine Corps tarp is also a very good choice. You can connect those together and it's extremely tough. Either way, you're going to want to keep pegs, bungees and line with those tarps so they can be put up in a very, very timely manner. Again, in a cold weather environment, you may find yourself needing heat, warmth and shelter very quickly. So having shelters that can be quickly put up is going to be your best friend and a huge, huge advantage to you. Tarps are fine and good, but they offer no insulation apart from wind protection. So it's going to be up to you, your clothing and equipment to ensure that you're insulated, as well as fires and any other sorts of stoves that we previously discussed. Another option for winter camping is going to be a canvas tarp. These are phenomenal, and they've been big parts of human history for many, many years. And the Sami people, the northern people, love these shelters. Canvas, it's very good waterproof when treated, but it also is a good insulator and can retain heat in an environment. But canvas is also very, very heavy. If you have a sled, dogs, or snowmobile or vehicle, I highly recommend taking a canvas tent along with a wood stove. But that's getting more beyond the topic of this video. For now, a quick accessible tarp with lines and pegs ready to go is going to be your best friend for a shelter. So let's talk about rifles and weapons when operating in a cold weather environment. The biggest thing you're going to want to consider is going to be your optics. Batteries do not like the cold. If you have a battery powered optic, you're going to want to carry spare batteries for that optic. Another consideration is scope covers and scope caps. I like the ability in the wintertime, if it's not raining and dry, to have scope caps. If I put my rifle down, if I dive into the snow, there's nothing worse than having a blanket of white when you look through that optic. Having scope caps to be able to get into position, put on and off, and to have a clear optic is an absolute game changer. On top of this is going to be your weapon lubrication. Lubrication is huge. Standard military CLP is only good from a temperature of -60 to I believe it's plus 160. So if you're operating in an extreme cold weather environment, you might want to consider using a cold weather lubricant. Extreme CLP, I believe, is one, and that extends that range to, I believe, -100 plus 600 degrees. A lot of machine guns use that. As well as with weapons, you're going to want to look at the weapon itself. Not only camouflage, as we're not talking about that today, you guys are already aware of that, but more the control surfaces. You might want a bigger charging handle. You're going to be wearing gloves. Is that trigger housing big enough for you to put your finger into and actuate that trigger properly? So getting trigger housing extenders, bigger control surfaces, bolt catches, mag releases, things of that nature. Are the buttons on your lights and lasers too small to use with gloves on? These are all things you're going to want to consider when going into a cold weather environment. So look at your weapon, think about what can be done better. Let's talk about other fighting equipment. Our magazines. A lot of magazines and chest rigs are open. What this means is that water and moisture can get inside. If for whatever reason it is raining heavily and that water freezes, ice can get into those magazines and they can freeze up. And this can actually cause jams or your inability to insert the magazine into the weapon. So it's a good idea to check your magazines. If your mags do get wet and are freezing, put them inside of your body, 1 or 2 of them, and let them thaw out. Keep 1 magazine in the weapon is always a good idea. Again, you're stopping dirt and water from getting into those small crevices and ruining your day. When it comes to batteries for things like optics and night vision, again, keep this close to your body. It's a lot easier to keep them nice and warm than have them warm up and thaw out. It can take up to 24 hours for a cold battery to fully get warm and up to its original charge state in a cold weather environment. As weather gets colder, those batteries decrease. Alkalines will die very, very quickly. So you're going to want something like a lithium battery. I'm a big fan of lithiums. Keep them close to your body, on your person, and ready to go. Whether you keep them in your optical systems, your night vision, is up to you. I'm a big fan of keeping them out until I get ready to use it. There is no reason to have, especially outdoors in a winter environment. Urban environment can be different, but out here, I like to keep my batteries on my person and then insert them into either the tools when I'm about to use them. The rifle, again, you're going to want a battery in to have it ready to go, but for your spare batteries, I'm a big fan of keeping them close to your body. So guys, there's an intro or a brief video on some cold weather techniques that can help you out in the field. I hope this helped. I hope you learned something. Comment below if you have any tips or techniques or lessons you've learned. But the biggest thing is get out there and train. Have fun and look after each other. Thank you so much. Take care. One last thing, let me know what video topics you'd like to see. If you're enjoying these, comment below, share your stories, and I'll keep doing them. I'm having a fun time doing this, passing on some knowledge, getting out here, training, using the kit. So, see you guys next time.